What's going on, spectators? Thank you for coming back for more. This week, hide your kids, hide your wife, because Chris, Vancouver Comic Junkie, is back for a second go-around. And this time, he is spilling one of the most jaw-dropping, brain-exploding Grail tales we've ever heard anywhere. In fact, this Grail tale is so good, it's got to come with a warning. Jesus and I have never laughed so hard while recording an episode. That said, this one might not be suitable for younger ears. Just a heads up. So put on your earmuffs and watch out for the man wielding fists like frozen chickens. This is episode 32.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Hello and welcome back, spectators. Thanks for tuning in for the latest episode of Spectales. For all you new listeners out there, thanks for giving us a shot. Spectales is a comic book podcast that asks collectors and creators, what's your Grail tale? Each week, we explore news stories about the comic grails we love and the epic journeys behind how they were obtained or how they inspired new creativity. We also dive into comic book speculation and how, as collectors, we can help the hobby pay for itself. I am your name my own collection because I earned the right to host Jake, along with waiting for somebody else to name his collection for him, co-host Jesus.
That is not true. That is not true. It is an amalgamation of the Scarce Army and the Bearded Collection. You play with it how you want, but that's what the collection is called.
Oh, is that so? You are naming your own collection now?
No, I didn't name it. I just said it's an amalgamation. You name it what you want. So I didn't name it technically.
but you are suggesting the name.
Hey, it's just a simple suggestion. I'm just putting it out there. Whatever happens, if it comes back,
you label it however you'd like, an amalgamation or what. But that's fine. You know, you gave me a kind of crap about it last week, but I'm proud of the conspiracy collection. I will not apologize whatsoever. And I even had multiple people reach out to me and say, you know what, Jake, I think you're right. We should be able to name our own collections.
Look, I appreciate your wife reaching out to you and kind of supporting you there. But
we don't have time for this, Jesus. We've got a big show. This week, we've got to cover a lot because we are going to be announcing and previewing a few things that will be kicking off next week, March 2nd, right?
Yes, huge things. It's coming. Also, don't sleep on this episode. This episode I'm calling our Hulk 181 episode, and I'll explain to you in a little bit.
I have no idea what that means, but okay, don't forget to come back to that. But before we jump into the announcements and the previews, I want to first bring on our guest and good friend of the show, Chris Donaldson, otherwise known on Instagram and YouTube as Vancouver Comic Junkie. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's good to be back. I can't believe I've been on here 3 times now.
This is number 3. And if you include something special we're going to be talking about today, you've done 4 shows with us.
Ooh.
Well, we got to finish this one. I guess we can't count it as a full show until we get to
this could go off the rails at any moment.
But seriously, though, Chris, thanks for coming back.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining. And I wanted to call it the Hulk 181 episode because this is the first appearance of Chris's Grail tale. But is it a true first appearance or is episode 2 the first appearance? Which one is it? Which one are you going to collect, Jake, is what I want to know.
I mean, I'm collecting both if possible. For those listening who are not familiar, Chris was our very first guest ever on the show. He was episode number 2. However, at that time, we were pretty loosey-goosey on what the format was of the show. And for the most part, we just BS'd for an hour and we forgot to do a Grail tale.
Oh, yeah, I totally missed it. Yeah, it's great.
It is actually the only episode we have ever done where there was not a Grail tale. So it is actually very special. It's something that if you have not collected yet, go back and collect that episode because it's still worth listening to even without a Grail tale because it's just a whole bunch of just funny.
Bullshit.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
bullshit. But like fun comic bullshit. If you want to go driving and listen to a bunch of nerd talk, that's
pretty
the
much.
episode for you.
Exactly right. So this week we have an important announcement that we've been teasing for a couple of weeks already. So let's just pull the Band-Aid off. Jesus, the listeners deserve answers.
You think they want answers?
I think they want the truth.
Man, I don't think they can handle the truth.
They can handle it, so give it to them already.
All right. Okay. All right, here it is. So I'm just going to pull the Band-Aid off. Spectales is launching a Patreon page.
That's it. That's the big one. On March 2nd, we're launching a Patreon page, and we're pretty excited about it. So let's dive into a bit about why we're doing this and what you need to know. Spectales started as a way for Jesus and me to connect to other collectors by talking about the absolute best part of this hobby, the comics we hold most dear, Grails. And while the show started extremely small and we were bootstrapping everything, it has since become a much bigger thing. From a literal army of dedicated listeners to some A-list comic creator guests, the community acceptance for Spectales has just, in all honesty, just kind of taken us off guard. So we want to take the show to the next level. We're already pouring a lot of our time and passion into making this weekly show, which we absolutely love doing, but we're hoping to do just a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. And, the next phase for Spectales is more than just, our Patreon. We're going to be updating the show, updating our look with the fresh new logo and colors, and also, creating even more content that you guys love for our listeners.
And for those of you unfamiliar, Patreon is a platform that allows artists and podcasts like us to gain some financial support from our listeners. In exchange for your support, all patrons will receive some exclusive benefits you won't get anywhere else. This support will allow us to grow the show and also produce some fun and unique content we otherwise wouldn't be able to create without the Patreon. So, due to the exclusivity of the group, we are officially naming our patrons the Scarce Army.
Let's go. We are here. The Scarce Army is here. We have a seat at the table. We want full benefits. We want the full meal. None of this appetizer stuff. Give it to us, Jake.
Yes. All right. Yeah, I hear you. The Scarce Army is real. I am fully acknowledging the Scarce Army. I am on board. I still think it could be scarce. Maybe it'll become the Scarce Army.
Never.
But instead, let's jump into what the benefits are for joining the Scarce Army. Most Patreon pages use a multi-tier approach with different benefits coming at each tier. We are launching our Patreon with only one single tier. We wanted to keep it simple and focus on getting as many benefits as possible to everybody. Our one and only tier is $3.99 per month. This may sound like an awfully familiar number to you out there, and that's not by accident. We know firsthand the value an additional $3.99 can buy you on your monthly pull list. Our goal each month is to deliver at least this much value to every Scarce Army member in return for their subscription. Oh, okay, so Jesus, why don't you hit him with the benefits?
All right, man. I thought you'd never ask, but just because it's so important, I'm going to be reading it off because I want to make sure that I include everything and I don't miss anything. So first, I'll start off with exclusive access to our new monthly series, Floppies, a shape-shifting comic book show that changes every month to cover the wide range of comic topics and guests that Spectales can't do on its own. And we're going to preview that show here coming up shortly.
Yep.
Next is access to the Scarce Army Book Club Discord channel. So each month we'll read a new series or story arc and discuss the speculation implications in a private Discord group. Also, we have a Spectales newsletter which is going to be once a month. You'll receive news and exclusive inside information about what's coming up for Spec Tales, like guests, future guests, giveaways, or events, and also a list of all the spec books from the previous month. Also, we're going to be giving away monthly AOKs. So every month, we'll mail out some cool comics and collectibles to randomly selected Scarce Army members just for kicks. This could be trades, slabs, new comic book day books, or just some random spec books we've mentioned on the show. As much as we wish we could give everybody some books, this is truly the best thing that we could think of as a way to give books back into the community.
Yep.
Lastly, it's going to be a Scarce Army roll call. It's last but not least. So what that means is after joining, we'll thank you with a shout out on the next recorded episode of Spec Tales.
Yeah, and I want to say on that one, Jesus, if we end up having to do an entire episode where all we're doing is doing the Scarce Army roll call, I would be absolutely okay with that. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm willing to do that for you listeners if that's the case.
I'm willing to sacrifice that as well, man. A whole hour of just naming people that collect in the community. That sounds like an awesome episode to me.
That would be ridiculous support. I don't even know if that's not possible.
Okay. It is possible.
So hopefully all those sound like great benefits to you. And while we genuinely would appreciate you for supporting the show, we knew we just couldn't ask you to subscribe to something unless we felt we were over-delivering on benefits. So speaking of benefits, let's jump into previewing one of those benefits right now. Chris, you were actually a part of the first episode of Floppies. We had you and Newbie, which was another one of our first guests ever on the show. He was also in our giant size New Year's special. Chris, can you just to see what you thought, how did you feel about that first episode of Floppies that we recorded?
Well, I mentioned this before, but I actually thought it was the most fun I ever had just bullshitting about comics, especially on a YouTube or podcast show. So it was genuinely a great time.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. And the what you are all about to listen to, I'm going to preface it real quick. So the basic premise behind this episode of Floppies is we were calling it Shipwrecked. And the idea was Jesus, myself, Chris, and Newbie were all on a tropical cruise where the ship wrecked and we were stranded on a desert island. And the only thing that survived the crash were 20 comic books. We each took 5 books with us, and the books were the only thing that lasted. And while the island we're on was plentiful with as much food as we could eat, and all the water we could drink, unfortunately, it did not provide anything to use for toilet paper. And so, as you can imagine, we were doing an elimination process for these 20 comic books. Every day, we each had to select a book to remove from the stack of 20. And we would do this until we got to the very last book. Now, the goal, of course, for each one of us was we wanted one of our 5 books to be the last book standing. And whichever one was the last book standing, that person won the game. So, it was all in good fun. Of course, no books were harmed in the making of this episode of Floppies. And I'm going to go ahead with that preface. Let's go ahead and show you the preview. Hey, everybody. It's time to get shipwrecked.
I'm gonna have to break somebody's heart here, but oh man, I gotta be careful here. You know what? I'm gonna go with Hulk #1, and here's why.
Are you fucking kidding me? Wow, that's like a top. That's a big boy. I'm actually shocked. Everyone loves Hulk. It's like hitting a handicap kid. Jesus, you have no morals.
Here's why. Because if I can't have it, nobody else should.
Okay, that's a good reasoning.
So that's my reasoning for picking
At least I
that.
understand it.
I like that reasoning. That's a good one.
Oh yeah, I just like to watch the world burn. Well, fuck you.
Oh man.
So as you can tell, we have a ton of fun on this episode of Floppies, where the game is titled Shipwrecked, and we are just cutthroat, cutting books from one another. And again, as Chris said, honestly, I don't know if I can remember the last time I had that much fun just BSing on a mic about comic books, playing a stupid game.
Well, my favorite part was during it, we started to actually like defend the books and,
Yes.
and reasons why we would kill a book. And it got kind of savage there at the end because like it got down to just a few books. It was pretty crazy.
Well, then it got personal too, because it was like, well, I'm taking Jesus's because he took my book.
What? Yeah. No, I was just about to say something that I'm like, oh, I'll ruin the whole show. So.
Yes. Well, if you want to tune in to get the full episode of Floppies, it is unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what seat you're sitting in, only available to those who subscribe to our Patreon, which is dropping March 2nd. We will do many reminders between now and then, but we need to move on to this episode. Chris, we've got you on to tell a Grail tale, and I think you're familiar with the format of the show. But for anybody who is not familiar with our show, here's how it always goes. We start with recent pickups, where we will each discuss recent books that we have picked up, whether they be new or new comic book day kind of books, or books that we are collecting or something like that. Then we will go into the Grail tale, where Chris will tell us a story about a Grail book that he came across or how he got it. I guess he'll make of it what he wants. And we always close every show out with speculation, books that you might want to be on the lookout for, that they might be going up in value in the future. Sound good to everybody?
Sounds damn good.
All right. Well, let's kick off the first episode with our very new bumper.
Recent pickups.
All right.
Nice. Finish him.
Body blow.
Jesus, you're up first.
All right, man. I'll go first. I'm putting two books that I recently picked up. It's actually number 1 and number 2, recent, just started. It's actually from Joe Hill, who's Stephen King's son, but goes by Joe Hill, and also the artist, which I wanted to highlight the artist. The artist's name is Zoe Thorogood, with colors by Chris O'Halloran, which we know as well.
Yep.
And it's just interesting because the art reminds me of Martin Morato's art with Ice Cream Man. It's
really?
Just this creepy. Well, her style.
Okay.
And I'll say, like, on Twitter, she puts up some stuff, and I'll give you an example. It's like the top part is like a baby's head, and it turns into like a caterpillar's body, which is just it's just creepy. It's just like a creepy thing. So the book is Rain number 1 and Rain number 2, with her artwork on it throughout. I've been hearing good things about it, so I don't really know exactly what it's about, but I've been getting good recommendations about it, and also just the artwork is pretty cool. So Rain 1 and Rain 2, I'm just gonna be reading these, and then I'll give you guys an update on this on what I feel about it. But just really cool art, and it's from a really respected writer, Joe Hill. So I'll let you guys know how it is. But that's my recent pickups, 1 and 2 of Rain.
Isn't it amazing the quality of writing in books these days? Like just indie stuff. I bought a collection a couple years ago of a bunch of indie stuff. It was like $100 for just trying out stuff, and I couldn't believe how hooked I was on so many books so quickly. It was never like that before. We live in a golden age right now, and I don't think people know it.
Oh, it's
really that.
The writing is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep. It's pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny because you asked earlier, like, "Hey, do you got any books?" And I'm like, "No." And then I realized, yeah, I always have books. And they're literally right beside me. I picked up a few things. I got a Netflix Jessica Jones, New York Comic Con.
Oh,
exclusive.
nice.
It was like 99 cents, and I'm like, Jessica Jones is cool. She comes back. I'm in. You never know.
Yeah.
Everyone's been talking about these Star Wars High Republic Adventures number 1
Yeah.
and number 2. I just ran down to the store and grabbed these for like cover price.
Oh, nice.
And then I grabbed a couple of the High Republic number 1s. But then I learned after I bought them that there's like 500,000 of them printed. So whatever. I don't know. I'm not a Star Wars. Oh no, of course. I'm not a Star Wars guy particularly, just because I missed the boat and I'm kind of bitter about it. Fantastic Four 247. It's a classic Dr. Doom cover. But it's also an introduction to his adopted son. I grab all these Byrne like classic covers from the 80s whenever I see them in super high grades, and I've been slowly getting them graded. And I also found this, and this is something I want to recommend to everyone. Fantastic Four 186 is the first appearance of the Salem 6 or 7. Salem 7. So Agatha Harkness is going to have a new TV series on Disney Plus.
Yep.
Well, this will be a big key towards that. Also, the one before it, I just got a 185 in 9.8 from CGC back. Nice. I sold it for $1,000 within an hour and a half of opening the box. Just by telling people about it. So I kind of regret it now. I probably could have got a lot more for it. But these books are available. You can get them cheap. A lot of people don't know about them. I bought this for $4 Canadian, and this is a 9.8 candidate. These go for about $500 to $600 in a 9.8. Wow. So, and we're at 2 years out from that show. So there's not a lot of keys related to Harkness. So get out there. You got FF 155 or 185 and 186. Very important books. And I got a couple CGC books back that I'll show.
Getting some speculation knowledge in the recent pickup section. Chris is giving the goods.
You know me, I'm all about that. I got a Marvel Spotlight 6, first Star-Lord in comic book form. Got a 9.6. Wow. A 9.6. I got a Marvel .1 first Sam Alexander 9.8.
Cool.
That one got that. That's a keeper. As you guys know, I collect these Byrne FF covers. Man. I got a 9.8 and a 243. I just found out I have another 9.8 coming, so I'm super excited about that. I got 6 of these, the Ghost Rider 28, the first Midnight Suns, which isn't actually the first Midnight Suns. That's issue 31, but nobody seems to be paying attention to that. The only reason that people like this book is because the cover kicks ass and it says Midnight Suns on the cover, but they're actually not in it. And then this was the big one I was really happy about. I got a 9.8 on Hulk 449, the first Thunderbolts. And I actually just got another one I found out on Friday because a bunch of my books just shipped, and I looked at the grades. And yeah, so I got three pre-screen 9.8 boxes coming back in the next week.
Man.
Nice,
very cool.
We did pretty well on it. So I think I only, out of 75 books, I think I rejected. I think it was seven books out of 75. So pretty good.
Nice, good numbers.
That's really good. That's a really good percentage right there.
Yeah. So we'll have to do a YouTube show and open those together.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So, well, I'm gonna jump in with my recent pickup. I actually, when I was preparing for the show, I kind of slipped my mind, which is funny because I've already read it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This last week, I picked up a new graphic novel written by Tim Seeley and art by Ilias Kyriazis, and I apologize for the pronunciation of the name. Chronophage is the name of it. This is a humanoids publication, and it was incredible. So talk about like a toxic relationship. The main character is a female clothing designer who has had a really tough life her entire life, and she meets a man who, as soon as she meets him, her life slowly starts getting better. But what she doesn't realize is that pieces of her life, people, things, start going missing from her life. That things that are like bringing her life down, but the thing that's bringing her down though is just being eliminated. For example, like a friend, and that was a detriment to her life and causing problems. Well, as it turns out, this man or thing basically comes into her life, and it's actually feeding off of her timeline. It's feeding off of her life. And it's not eliminating the good memories. It's eliminating the bad memories in her life. But by doing so is feeding off of her. So it's a parasite of sorts. And it's this crazy sci-fi story. And it's all about these toxic relationships all throughout the story. All the other characters are as well going through these toxic relationships. So it examines in-depth relationship heavy stuff, but also the artwork is just gory as hell. Like it's just blood and guts, and it was my jam all the way through. And I binged it. Like it's like 150 pages, and I just mowed right through them.
Man, I'm gonna have to pick that up, and that reminds me of that show and that book, The Outsider, by Stephen King, who was based on a grief eater. He would eat people's grief.
Interesting.
Stuck around. Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing. Like he's eating bad toxic relationships, but in the Outsider, he eats grief, so he's always around funerals and stuff. It's crazy.
Did you watch the show?
Yeah,
it's
on
excellent.
HBO.
Yeah,
it's a great show. It's a great show. But yeah, that's what it reminded me of, man. So that's definitely right in my lane. I'm gonna be picking that up too.
Yeah, and the thing is I really didn't even spoil anything for you. That's basically the back cover, what I described. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Seeley's writing is great, but the artwork, I have to say again, the artwork is what really drew me to it. I saw it in the previews. I saw the artwork in it and just said, "Holy crap, I've got to get that book." So that was my recent pickup. I read it in a flash. I highly recommend anybody else to go out and do the same.
Cool. I'm in.
All right. Now we're up to the next segment.
Grail Tale.
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale.
That's right. My favorite segment, Jesus' favorite segment. It's time for the Grail Tale. Chris, the mic is all yours.
Oh, Jesus. It's all on me. So Grail Tales, I have like 3 Grail Tales, and I had to pick one, but like 3 really good stories, and most of them happened when I was pretty young, like in the beginning. And I wanted to pick one, but I had one in particular where I got 3 Grails in one go, and I thought I'll pick that one. And so I grew up in a small town in the prairies of Canada. There was a few comic stores during the spike of comic stores in the 90s. Which was kind of amazing if you think about it, but for such a small town. And I used to hit up one of the stores all the time. And when I was a kid, there was a few things that I always wanted. I wanted a Famous Monsters #1, which was a Warren book, and it's where I came from, very rare. Like the odds of me ever finding one were 1,000,000 to 1. I wanted a Showcase 4 because it was the first super expensive key issue I ever saw. Like with a number under it that blew my mind, and it just kind of it became like almost mystical to me. I don't know, because I'd seen Spider-Man #1 and stuff like that, and my other thing was Batman in 3D was a book I wanted for some reason. I have like a weird obsession with 3D books, and you guys know that.
Yeah.
And at the time, like in the 80s, like how I started collecting was Hulk comics. Hulk and G.I. Joe were the 2 that got me into comics, but Hulk, I was trying to like get a full run of the highest grade I could get. And so those were kind of the books I was looking for. And my store, I'd pretty much taken every Hulk book that was of any, quality out of it. And I remember one day I was in the store, it was like just a weekday, and I had gotten off work and I was hanging out there, and this like, I would say, the most redneck man I'd ever seen in my life walked in. Like literally dust came off him as he walked in, and he rolled up his sleeves. And he's like, "I heard you guys buy comic books," and he was like, and the owner was like, "Yeah, we buy comic books." He goes, "What do you got?" And he goes, "I got this comic book with this green guy on it. I don't know, it's a big green guy. I got a lot of them." And the owner goes, "Oh, that's the Hulk." And at the time, there was really only a few Hulk books worth anything. And he goes, the owner asks like about the key issues, and the guy's like, I don't fucking know. And but the way he was being so gruff, the owner was kind of like, well, fuck you. And he just says, I'm not buying anything from you. And this guy just goes, well, fuck you too, and walks out. and that's the story. No, I'm just kidding. But
that's where it ends.
And that's where it ends. And I've been thinking about it ever since. No, so I don't know why, but I just thought, well, I'm gonna follow him like out, and I go outside, and he's getting into this. Yeah, no, maybe I was thinking maybe he has some of them with him. Like
you're gonna mug him. Is that what you're gonna do?
Yeah. But no, this guy had like fists like frozen chickens. There was no way I was mugging him. Like there's no way. No, like each finger looked like a potato. Yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, I follow him out, and I'm like, hey man, could I see your comics? I buy comics, and I think I'd just gotten paid, and I had like $280 on me in cash or something. And he goes, yeah. And he pulls this tarp off the back of his flatbed of his truck. And it's all these boxes, these like potato boxes. And I open them up, and there's comics in there, and it's Hulks. And it's like every Hulk issue from like 102, including a couple of the Tales to Astonish, quite a few of those. And these things are beautiful. Like they look like they've been sitting in Mylar bags for 30 years. Like they were gorgeous.
Wow.
And he goes, well, how much do you want, or how much would you pay for these? And I'm like, I'm not really sure. He goes, I don't know. Like and he goes, would you do it for cover price? And I'm like, yeah, I'd buy cover price. Sure. And so we just kind of flipped through them, and he's like, just make it like $50. And I'm like, okay. And so I bought them, and I put them in my car, the boxes. And then he goes, well, I got more at home. Do you want to see those too? And I'm like, I really would like to see those. And he tells me he lives out by this like small town, and it's like 30 minutes away, which is fine. And he goes, follow me. And I'm driving, and this is before cell phones, so I couldn't really tell anyone where I was going. And I'm following this guy out into the middle of nowhere. And I got up to this farm, and I'm like, and I'm also young and broke, so I like my gas is probably on the level where it's like, am I gonna make it home? Kind of situation. And I get out there, and it's like one of those creepy old shitty farms. And he's obviously doesn't have a family or anything. He's just like a creepy old guy who lives out there. And he drives, but he has this giant barn, and he drives right into the barn. Like I don't know why that creeped me out for some reason. So I parked outside, and I waited for him to come out, and he wouldn't come out. And then he like yelled at me, get the fuck in here. And I'm like, okay. And I ran out. Like I was genuinely scared of this guy. And I get in there.
This entire story makes me uncomfortable, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sweating over here, man. Like what's going to happen?
Does Chris die in this story? Like, does he make it to the end?
This is the first time I had sex. No. No. I'm just kidding. So I go in, and it's just this dusty old shitty barn, and there's literally like walls full of boxes and toys and like pop culture things like pinball machines and you name it. And so I go, where'd you get all this stuff from? And he said he used to buy liquidation sales, like estate sales and things like that. And he would just go, it was like a hobby of his to buy stuff that he thought was neat. And he stopped doing it years ago, but he did this in the 70s and 80s. And he just he didn't know what to do with any of it. But he takes me over to this box, and it's literally just one box left of comics, like this, like small, maybe like a short box size. And I open it up, and it's like just tattered, shitty, like House of Mystery books, but not Bernie Wrightson ones, like the worst kind. And I'm like, shit. And then I find the greatest book ever, a Showcase number 4, just randomly in there.
Wow.
Just
really?
Sitting there, just randomly. And it's probably, I mean, back then it looked gorgeous, but like I never got it graded because I didn't own it forever. Like it left my hands like about 15 years later. Oh. But it was probably like a 4 or 5 to 5.
Wow.
Like fine-ish. Fine.
Wow.
Yeah. VG plus. It was nice. It was very bright. So I pull that out, and I almost have a heart attack, but I don't act like I'm having a heart attack. And I keep flipping, and there's a Hulk 6, and there's a Hulk 5, and there's a Hulk 4, There's a Hulk 3 and there's a Hulk 2, but there's no Hulk 1. And I'm like, fuck. But I'm still pretty stoked about those.
Yeah.
And those are in pretty good shape. They're like in 8.0 shape, like which today are crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's great. And then I keep flipping, and at the bottom of the stack is like a copy of Famous Monsters of Film Man number 1, 2, and 3, just sitting there. And then he turns, and I go, yeah, I'll buy the box. And he goes, you know what, man? You came out here. I'll just give it to you. He just hands me the box. He's like, just get the fuck off my property. And I literally just took the box like nervously and left, thinking I'm going to get shot in the back or something on the way out. And I just threw the box into my car and just like drove the fuck home as fast as I could. And then got home, and I remember I ran over to the comic store that I was just at.
And you laughed in their face saying, you just turned the greatest guy.
I didn't say it that way, but I bought Mylar bags, and I said, do you have any golden age Mylar bags or like bigger ones? And he did. And I bought like a bunch of Mylars for all of them. Like even the Hulks, like I bought Mylars for it all, which almost broke me of everything. Like I think my pay went to them because they were like $1 a piece back then. And I told the guy what I found, and he called me a fucking liar to my. I'm like, okay. So I walked outside and I brought in the showcase number 4, and he was pretty upset when he saw that.
Of course he was, because he turned the guy away. But you were the one willing to travel out to the middle of nowhere,
potentially get murdered out there for these books.
And I gotta be honest, today I probably wouldn't have followed him anywhere. I probably would have made a deal to meet him somewhere in the city at some point.
I don't think that guy's making a deal. He's like, I'll just leave it in the garage then, or leave it in the barn.
I think that's the case, yeah. So, but I always dreamt of going back because he had all these toys from the 50s and 60s, and going and buying all that stuff. But the last time I was there a year ago, and I drove out to where he lived, and the barn isn't even there. It's like it's all farmland now. Somebody had just basically bulldozed the whole place.
Oh, wow.
So obviously, I mean, this is 25, 30 years ago.
I was going to say, you said pre-cell phones, but do you have a roundabout time? Is this like 95?
95 would be a perfect, 94, probably 94, actually. Because it was before I was, in my time, I was living in my hometown for a bit between cities.
What are we talking about here for that? Just that last box that he gave you. I mean, there had to have been $3,000 or $4,000 worth of comics. You think at that time? At
the time, I think the Showcase 4 was $3,500 in that grade, because it was like a $15,000 book at that time, or $12,000. It was huge. It was a big book, and I was stunned. But the Hulks weren't worth that much.
No,
at all.
The Hulks, no. But
they are now. Like, I mean, you can get a Hulk 2 and an 8.0. Holy shit, man! Like, that's like a down payment for a house.
Yeah, that whole box would be a down payment for a house right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It is the house.
Maybe a house in certain towns.
Yeah, exactly.
Depends on what state.
Yeah, totally. But I still have some of the Hulks, and the worst part is they were all mint, and the 181 was missing its cover. Everything else was like swear to God, like 9496, except for the 181 missing its cover.
But that was the best Hulk cover ever. That's why it was missing the cover, because whoever collected it ripped the cover off, probably taped it to their wall.
Oh, probably.
Or probably Red Dragon did and ate it, turned into Hulk 181.
Red Dragon. So, but that's to me, like the excitement of that is that when I was a little kid and I first saw that image of Flash on that cover, I don't know what it was. I'm not a big DC guy. I like Batman and stuff, but like that cover in particular, it just sang to me. And it just seemed like there's no way I'd ever find something like that, ever. And to find it on my own like that was just, I gotta be honest, I had a girlfriend at the time, and I remember telling her about it. She looked at me like I was insane. Like, because in the 90s, if like the idea of a comic being worth thousands of dollars was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. So, yeah.
It's such an incredible story, though. Like it's everybody's wet comic book dream to find that guy who's like, just get him out of my sight and you can have him. Like,
but here's the worst part. The guy was genuinely scary. Like
he sounds scary. Maybe it's just your voice, but like he scared me, and it was just you telling the story.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was scared. Yeah,
I mean, a couple of things with that, like it could literally be the origin story of a serial killer. You know, he
for sure.
lures people out to his barn with collectibles and 1950s memorabilia, and then you never heard from again.
My favorite part, though, when I was there was I was there and nervous. I was very nervous because I don't know, I didn't get along with like redneck ear guys, and I had a pierced ear. Like back then, everyone's left ear was pierced still. I think I had both my ears pierced actually, and he didn't notice until we were in the barn, and he turned to me. He's like, "Why the fuck is your ear pierced?" Like he literally was like truly bothered by it, and there was like this long pause, and I just thought, well, this is where it's going to end. This is it. He's found me out.
That's crazy.
Chris, I'm going to say, I mean, as you were telling the story, I was about 90% sure you were going to get knife raped and murdered right in that barn.
Hey, but I have a question, man. I think I'm assuming this is the first time I think we've heard one where you sold it, right? At some point.
Yeah.
The showcase. Yeah. So is that a book that you're wanting to get back at some point?
I don't think it's I mean, I would love to. But it's not a book I'm actively looking for. Prices on that book are so high. I would rather focus on the stuff that I really want. And it's just not, I don't know why I've lost, after you own a book like that, you kind of lose interest in needing to have it again, if that makes any sense. For me anyway, sometimes that's the case, but that's definitely the case with that book. Whereas the other books, oddly enough, like the Famous Monsters of Film Man #1, which I'm kind of missing part of the story, I was actually more excited by
that one
because of how rare and awesome it was, and I love that book. I still want to upgrade that book to like a 9.4, 9.6, like as high as I can go.
Do you still have that same copy?
Oh, I do, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah. Wow. Any of these did you get graded? Did you get any of these books graded?
Some of the Hulks, yeah. Back in like 2006, 2007, I think I got about 30 or 40 of them graded, and they graded out like 9.6s. A couple came back 9.8s, and a couple 9.4-ish, but in that ballpark. And with Hulks, I only had so much room. I was moving around a lot at that time for my work and stuff, and I just sort of let them go over time. I still have a couple of them, but nothing like special, like some of the earlier ones, and they're gorgeous, like the Stranko covers and stuff, but that's about it. Yeah. But it's like this story's like 30 years old still, if you think about it, it's almost 30 years ago, 25 years. So I mean, that's a lot of life's happened between then and now.
Yeah.
Chris comes back almost 6 months later and lays down an absolute monster of a Grail tale.
Yeah, man. That's awesome, man. Like that's really, but like you said too, Jake, it's like, oh man, I wish I had, it's basically a barn find, right? From a guy that just wants to get rid of them. Everybody wants a barn find, whether it's comic books, muscle cars, pinball machines, what have you, whatever you collect, you want to have a barn find where they're stuck there for however long in mint condition, and the guy's just like, just get out of my sight, just get out of my sight.
Oh yeah, he was annoyed by them.
Yeah. And that you even came to get him.
Oh yeah, I was helping him out, but he didn't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, the earrings bugged him. But it's funny. Do you guys buy collections or try to buy collections? Is that something you guys? I do. I'm
to some extent.
Always looking. Yeah, I mean, I only have so much time to do it, but as we all know, that situation is incredibly rare. But lately, I've been getting a lot of people come to me with like my brother's on his deathbed, and we got to unload some of his stuff. And we have a collection in the basement that he was collecting in the 70s. And we don't know what it is. Do you buy comics? And I've been getting that email frequently lately, like sort of that similar kind of thing, which is like the new barn find, I think, where it's,
it's the basement find now.
Yeah, it's a basement find now. I'm sure there's a few barns out there, but I don't know. I don't know how good the comics would be if you left them in the barn for 40, 50 years.
I would assume not great.
Yeah, they're under a tarp maybe, but speaking of, I've been, you mentioned a collection, and I've been looking at a collection. I shared it with Jake too. That is a whole Hulk run.
Wow.
So it's pretty big, and I'm still working on it. Maybe it'll come to fruition, but it was just interesting that there was a lot of Hulks that you talked about, and I'm currently right now looking at a Hulk run.
I'll throw it on the table too. I think Hulk right now is the most underrated Marvel Silver Age, unlooked at and unloved series. Outside of the number 181, and there's a couple keys in there, but generally, most people don't give a shit about that series, and they are cheap. And people felt the same about Thor about 3 years ago, and I was buying those things like crazy for $20 for a VF copy of Thor in the Silver Age with a Kirby cover. And like all of those are expensive now. Like they're all going through the roof. I think people will turn their attention to Hulk once Hulk changes within the MCU or something and becomes. I think after She-Hulk, I think people are going to change their opinion about Hulk personally. So
I think
it's a good time to buy.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I agree.
Okay, it is now time to move on once again to the next segment.
Speculation.
The speculation segment. Let's all go around the table and discuss a book or books we think have some value coming up in the future. Jesus, go right ahead.
All right, man. I only have one book, and we were tagged by somebody, I think it's Matrix Comics on Instagram, about Blade books. I'm going to go with an easy one. It is a Blade book. Blade is undervalued still. I think somebody on this panel, Omega Reed, did also a Tomb of Dracula 10 compared to what was it, Marvel Special Edition 15 comparison. So as Blade's first appearance, Tomb of Dracula 10 goes up and continues to go up, and his second appearance and his origin go up, people are going to start looking at other ones like we've talked about, the trickle-down effect. So I'm going to speculate on Blade number 1, the first solo series for Blade from 1994, which is a modern book. But how can it be modern if it's the same timeline as Chris's Grail tale from 30 years ago, basically, right? Like it's almost 30 years. So we're talking about here, right? So it is modern to a sense, but it's also a really cool book. Black cover, hollow foil cover, hard to find in high grade because of the black and the hollow foil.
Can I throw it on the table? I think you should buy that as a CGC book. I've bought 3 copies of that book raw. It can scratch so easily if it wasn't in a bag right away. Just to throw it out. Getting a 9.8 is not easy on that book.
That's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. So like it's going to be a coveted book when Blade is in the MCU proper, right? He's been in the MCU before when it was Wesley Snipes, but not this iteration of the MCU. It's his first solo series. It's a cool book, cool cover, 90s hollow foil. Artist is Doug Wheatley, writers Ian Edgington. And like Chris said, it's hard to get in high grade if it's raw. So I would definitely try to get a 9.8. Raws right now are going for anywhere between $60-$70 to a near mint plus or 9.8 candidate of $110-$150, depending on where you find them. So that's my speculation. I still feel there's a lot of room for that book.
I couldn't agree more.
Nice. I think that's a great one.
I win, Jake. I win. That's it.
Hold on. We haven't gotten to mine yet, so you can declare yourself the winner. And plus, Chris, I saw Chris pick up a stack. Get your notebooks out, everybody, because Chris is coming to town with some books.
I am. Just give me a second. You go. I got to find one more book.
Oh, okay. All right. You got to find. Well, it's pretty unorthodox for one of our guests to tell me to go, but I guess I'll do it. All right, I'm going with, this is a future speculation, one that is a book that's not even out yet for purchase. I am going to go with World's Finest, number 1. This is Batman, Superman, World's Finest, number 1, and it is to be released on 3/16/22. So coming up in March, this is, Mark Waid is getting back into the saddle to write. He's writing, Dan Mora is doing the cover art, or the artwork. And this is something, so World's Finest, if you're not familiar, World's Finest was series done by DC, and it stopped in 1986. And there have been a couple iterations where they did something called World's Finest, but they changed where the apostrophe was. It was S apostrophe instead of apostrophe S, and it had a whole bunch of new characters, and it was not what the old World's Finest was originally, or in the 80s. And so they're bringing the Dark Knight and the Man of Steel back in this series, and they're going to be introducing some new characters as well. So that's something I wanted to bring up. It's a new team up book with Batman and Superman, but number 3, so the first one I think is important to pick up, but also number 3, because they've already announced that it is the first team appearance of House of G and the first appearance of Devil Nezra. Neza? I don't know how it's pronounced yet, but it looks like there is going to be a new villain for Superman and Batman to take on. I think it could be a really good book. There are going to be a few variants, 1 in 25, 1 in 50, and 1 in 100. The 1 in 100 is being done by Dan Mora, which I think is a pretty sweet cover. But they're all pretty good. There's a Jim Lee cover. I think that this could be something worth looking at, as it's bringing together 2 historic level characters into a series that, if you go back in comic book history, it's one of the biggest titles from DC, or initially anyway. So that's why I'm just putting it on everybody's radar in mid-March. If you haven't put it on your poll list already, or you haven't said, if you haven't ordered it, it might be worth looking at.
I got to say, with Superman, and Jesus and Jake know this, I worked on Supergirl for 4 years, and I also worked on the new Superman TV series for 2 years. And one thing I learned during this was this: Superman has shitty villains, horrifically shitty villains, except for Lex Luthor. He's always cool.
Yep.
But generally, his villains are really stupid and haven't really seen the light of day correctly, in my opinion. He needs a villain so desperately. Like, and a new one would be amazing. Like, they need to figure it out.
Well, one that can take on Batman and Superman, which I think it's incredibly interesting, and they're introducing this character in book 3, issue 3. I think just put it on your poll list. It might be worth it, and just see where it goes. But these could become highly coveted books, and those variants, of course, may do it for people. But it's going to be a big deal, and they got Mark Waid back, and I think that's a really big deal as well.
It is. And what do you think the print run on something like that is? It's probably pretty low.
I mean, relatively low, right? I think they're going to do a pretty sizable chunk for the number 1, but I don't think number 2 and 3 and 4, those print runs are going to be likely a little bit lower, waiting to see if the demand, because they'll do, DC is doing second prints, right? Unlike Image, who's not doing the second prints, so their first prints are a little bit higher right now. But if you go over to DC, they might wait to see if the book takes off, which I think it will.
Cool. I guess it's my turn?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is a couple books here that were hot a few months ago, but they dipped a lot, and I've been buying them again. It's the first appearance of Eros, which is Star Fox.
Yep.
And that's Captain Marvel 27, and also Avengers 232 are 2 keys. And the reason I'm picking these books is we all know that Iron Man 55, which I have in my hand right here, is overly expensive, and it's really only not even a guest appearance, like a cameo of him in this. So in actuality, it seems like everyone's going after this Captain Marvel 27. They cast a boy band member who doesn't really act very often, but the whole world lights up when they see him. Like, I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, the girls in the audience lost their fucking minds.
Harry Styles has that effect on people.
Oh, it's crazy. And so I'm suspecting Marvel's very aware of this, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that character down the road. So I would recommend grabbing on to those right now, because they have dipped since the October when it kind of spiked a little. Yep. It's a good opportunity. Another book I've been grabbing whenever I see them and a deal is Captain Marvel 17, First Phyla Vel. My gut tells me that we're going cosmic really big here soon. I think in about a year after when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out, we get Warlock going, all these kind of things. Once that world starts moving, there is so many characters that can be introduced into that world. It'll be a completely separate world. Marvels will probably have a lot to do with that too. And I think Phyla-Vell just fits perfectly into that situation. And then my last book is Avengers 69, which I have 2 copies here and a couple more going to CGC. This is the first appearance of Hyperion, who I just think is a cool fucking character. And whenever I hear people talking spec, that name always pops up for some reason, but no one knows what to do with them. But it also has a bunch of other characters in it. It's got Grandmaster's first appearance, and it also has Nighthawk's first appearance, who I think is a super killer character. So, but these are a little pricey, these books, I know. If you want cheap spec, like $5 and less, and you want to make some good money on it, what I've been doing lately and getting them graded is I've been going after things like Rogue #1 from 1992, Black Bolt #1 from 2015, #1 character like Gambit #1. These are cheap books to get in raw form, and in 9/8 they go for really nice money, $300, $400, and you can get them. You can make that happen pretty easily because not everyone's doing it. And when Rogue hits the MCU, that will be like that Blade #1. You know, that Blade #1's, I think it's nearing $600 in a 9/8 now. That's a lot for a pretty shitty comic from the 90s. So, you know, and we can agree. I mean, I have that book. I have the whole run. Those Blade books are terrible. Like they have terrible covers. They're terrible. And but we want them because they're actually kind of tough to get in they shape and they suit the character. So yeah. So anyway, I'm a big fan of that. Like turning $5 bargain bin books into $400 CGC books so I could sell them and buy grails is really what it is. So I would recommend going down that path.
Totally agree. I think, I mean, if you listen to nothing in this episode except for the last 5 minutes of Chris naming off all of these books, just go back and replay it, write it all down. That was some of the best advice I think ever given on this show. That was all gem stuff.
Well, I'm all about like talking to people because I mean we're not all millionaires, and and we all have to work our way up. But there's really easy ways to work your way up from like literally having $20 invested into turning that into like $10,000. You can do that fairly easily in comics if you just pick the right books, get them graded, sell them graded, use that money and not pay your bills with it, and put that into other things like it. You could get to 10 grand within 6 months very easily with about a few $100s. Actually, I believe I've done it. You know, it's totally doable. And I think once people see that, if you have $10,000 war chest, you can buy pretty much any book you're kind of looking for at a certain grade.
Yep,
it's kind of exciting. So you know, it just takes a little bit of work.
In 6 months to a year, you could get your Grail. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, totally.
Pick your Grail and start low and stack up to get there.
Yeah, it's doable. I mean, we're all buyers and sellers ourselves, and I love seeing people get their Grails. But like, we've all watched those books pop. If you just are selective about it and don't buy every fucking thing that passes your eye, which is a problem for all of us, I know, but you can do really well. So, I think.
Yeah, great advice. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. Jesus, thanks for sharing yours as well. In the end, I still am going to say I probably won, but that's okay. I mean, the points don't matter.
You're so far behind, the points don't matter. I got you, Jake.
That is going to do it for this episode of Spec Tales. Before we head out the door, I do want to say, Chris, you've got a movie, and I think we need to tell everybody that they should go and watch it. I'm not going to pitch it for you. I'll let you do it yourself. Where should they go find it? What's it called?
I do have a movie. It's called Ditched, with a DITCHED. Ditched. It's a horror movie. If you like grindhouse kind of horror movies with a really fucked up ending, this is the movie for you. It's a little gory, a little scary, a little funny, all of that. And it came out on Apple and I think Google's VODing it and all the VOD channels about 2 weeks ago, and it just hit Blu-ray. I think it hits this week on Blu-ray.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so if you like Blu-ray, you can get it. I know Amazon has it for like $14. It's pretty cheap. So
yeah, I did see it on Amazon as well, and it's wonderful. If you like Chris, if you just listen to what Chris was talking about, I mean, it's effectively, it's his humor, but it's also the twisted. It's like the guy in the barn, right? It's gonna scare you, but it's also gonna make you laugh, and in the end, you're going to walk away from this thing saying, "Yeah, I'm glad I did that."
I will say I did get a chance to recently see it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it had a great ending. I loved it. I mean, I just like these type of movies. So thank you, Chris, for putting it out there, man.
Oh, thanks for watching it. It's amazing people are watching it to me.
That's kind of how we feel about this show. We can't believe people are out there listening to it, but they really truly are. But that said, Chris, where could they find you on the internets?
Vancouver Comic Junkie on YouTube. I owe 1 million videos to that channel right now. I've been very undiligent, but talk to me on IG as well, Vancouver Comic Junkie. Hit me up. I love talking comics.
Okay, that's going to do it. We are out for this week. Thank you so much, everybody, for all listening. Have a good week.